All right, this is the beginning of my little birds that I like to call blessing birds. First thing I do is paddle a lump of clay to get close to round. The longer I take on this, the closer to round starting, the easier it is. But I also have to be conscious of the fact that there's a lot of heat coming out of my hands. And if it's also a hot day, I don't have a lot of working time or a window for work. So I kind of get it sort of round, but I don't worry about perfection at this point. So you can see it's close to round. Then I find the center with my thumb and I turn and push repeatedly. This is why it's called a pinch pot, because it's literally made of pinches. And what I'm doing is I'm starting with the bottom, getting it about 3/8 of an inch thick. And I'm satisfied with the fact that that is nice and even on the bottom. I start working up the sides of the ball and I go to the middle. You can see that it's always my thumb on the inside. I can change hands if my hands get tired. And I'm using all 3 of my other fingers on this hand. Moving it, pinching it. It's easy to thin out a wall that is too thick, but if I go too thin, I've pretty much spoiled it, and I need to start over. So once the bottom and the middle is pretty even, then I take a little bit of time to go to the very top, and that's an area especially that I don't want to be too thin. So that looks pretty good to me. Next, scoring the rim of the little pot, roughing it up with a little what I call magic water. Then the edges carefully get folded in so that those scored edges come together. Like that. That's probably the one step that takes the most practice, so that you're not completely, creating like a set of lips instead of that. Not much of a ridge. Okay, take a smoothing tool and I smooth that seam down. It's pretty lumpy and bumpy at this point. Then a paddle again. This is going to be the side of the bird that becomes the little head. You can see I'm paddling all the way around, kind of folded down upon itself. Smooth out the little crease that was created there. Again, it's still pretty rough looking at this point. When I teach a class, typically new beginners, that this takes them about an hour to make a bird. But I have done so many of these that I've narrowed that time frame down. You see now I'm using a ring shape with my thumb and first finger. This is to kind of create a neck on the bird to be. And then using the ends of my fingers to try to get the head more to a round shape. So now from here I put on the beak. That determines the direction the bird is looking at. So this one I'm just going to go straight ahead. My goal is to not have to add or delete any clay from the sculpture. Just create the whole piece out of one piece of clay. So I've made this little cone shape, but in doing that I've kind of distorted the head, so I have to go back and make that little head back to a rounder version. And find where the eyeballs should be. Press in this little dowel, a skewer. See that place? Now I go to the other end and I take this pointed end and start pinching it to create a tail. Pinching and shaping, lifting it up. I really like the way no two of these birds are alike. And I have to say, I do go through different phases. I'll make a bunch of birds one way, and then I'll suddenly get an idea and want to do the wings a little differently. And so over time, you'll see the birds change. Right now, this is the way I'm doing my birds. So next, I decide how he's going to sit on the table or a surface, and he's going to get a little flat spot. So I'm going to just kind of tap it down on my board surface, find that flat spot, and make it even flatter with my paddle. You see that? So I'm almost finished with this one. Next, I take my blending stick, or it's actually a trim tool for pottery, and I just kind of take that tip and I make the suggestion of a wing, as well as suggestion of feathers. I use the point to texture the wings. Flip it around and do the other side. And the last thing I do is I take my little cleanup tool and press that in. This actually, depending on the glaze I'm using, can look a little bit like a heart shape. Take a wetted finger and just press down in that V shape ahead of the wings, just to kind of offer a little definition there. Got to go back and reinforce those carved lines that got smoothed out by doing that. And at this point, it is finished. After it has gotten halfway dry, I use a special tool to carve to create a little opening for the notes, as well as another opening in case somebody wants to put it on a nail or a little peg. When it's fully dry, it'll get sanded down, so all these little ridges and rough edges will be smoothed out. It is then put in my kiln and fired to just under 1900 degrees Fahrenheit. After that, it is washed. Stains are put into the low spots, wiped off. Different glazes are either dipped in buckets of glaze or hand painted with brushes. It is cleaned up. The eyes, the beak are created with black glaze. I sign the bottom of the bird with Chico Lovebird, and then put it in the kiln again, this time closer to 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. After the glaze firing, sometimes I need to Dremel off the bottoms of the birds and clean them up before they are ready to go and find a new home. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.